Today's story demonstrates the exact reason why you should always call home to check on your family, especially if they seem to all of a sudden be MIA. In today's video, we will share the sad story of a man named Amarjit, whom along with his wife, children disappeared in February of 2003. Seemingly, they just moved away back to their home country. At first glance, a family moving back to their home country might not seem all that strange. But what if I told you Amarjit was an entrepreneur whose business was worth millions? Would you still think he and his family would simply up and run back home without securing their assets or saying goodbye? The fact of the matter was they were all killed and the scene was staged to look like a disappearance. What was even more shocking was that the police would never have unraveled this criminal act had a family member not stepped in to give chilling details that eventually led to the root of the matter. But before we get into the core of Amarjit Chohan's heartbreaking story, if you're a fan of true crime mysteries delivered in a riveting story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do here. And we upload 2 or 3 times a week, so if that's of any interest to you, please assassinate the like button. And while you're at it, subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, now let's get into our story. Amarjit Chohan, a diligent immigrant from India, carved a path of success through sheer determination and hard work. His entrepreneurial venture, CIBA Freights, thrived as a fruit importation company strategically located at Heathrow, where a significant portion of his clientele resided. What set Cohan apart was not just his astute business acumen, but also his reputation as a compassionate and considerate employer. Unlike those who wielded figurative whips to maintain discipline among their workforce, Cohan's demeanor was characterized by a perpetual smile, capable of igniting motivation even in the most laid-back employees. While his professional life flourished, his personal life mirrored even greater success. He shared his life with Nancy, a younger partner, and together they nurtured a harmonious family comprising their 2 children, Devinder and Ravinder. Prosperity was the norm. Financial abundance coexisted with profound familial love, fostering bonds that transcended generations. Life, it seemed, was a harmonious melody. However, as life would have it, possessing a kind heart and a flourishing business can sometimes make one a target for unscrupulous individuals. For Cohan, the seeds of trouble were sown in early 2002, unbeknownst to him. Ken Reagan, a seemingly penitent ex-convict seeking employment and a fresh start after his release from prison, crossed paths with Cohan. Initially hired as a driver responsible for freight deliveries, Reagan harbored a covert agenda to wrest control of Cohan's company and betray the very hand that extended him a lifeline to avoid starvation and the specter of returning to prison. As the tale unfolds, we find that success and benevolence do not always shield one from the complexities and challenges that life may present. In the year 2002, Cohan found himself entangled in a precarious situation, a dilemma that would haunt him for years to come. The arrival of their latest hire, Reagan, had left him in a quandary, bereft of the resources necessary to conduct a thorough and exhaustive background investigation. In retrospect, things would have been different if they had known more about Reagan's hidden talents and shady history. Unbeknownst to Cohan, Reagan concealed a shadowy and malevolent history, a dark chapter as a notorious drug kingpin that would send shivers down the spine of anyone who dared to uncover it. When the allure of wealth entered the equation, Reagan proved to be unafraid of resorting to ruthless tactics to safeguard his empire. Though Reagan had indeed served time behind bars, the full extent of his criminal exploits remained shrouded in secrecy. His illicit enterprise, masquerading as a legitimate freight business, was in reality an integral cog within London's largest and most sinister drug cartel. Between 1996 and 1998, Reagan orchestrated the trafficking of staggering quantities of narcotics, masterminding numerous money laundering schemes and facilitating the forgery of over 1,000 passports, all aimed at expediting the global movement of illicit substances. His newfound wealth allowed him to drape himself in opulent attire, assuming a facade designed to attract the attention of celebrities and socialites alike. Among his fleeting pursuits was Belinda Brewen, but their budding connection was destined to be short-lived. In the fateful year of 1998, Reagan's luck took a dark and disastrous turn when he was apprehended in possession of a staggering 25 kilograms of heroin. Faced with the grim inevitability of a 20-year prison sentence, Reagan opted for a reduced term by divulging the identities of his compatriots within the drug ring. His cooperation led to the capture of numerous criminal associates and the confiscation of substantial drug shipments. Consequently, Reagan's sentence was significantly shortened to a mere 8 years, of which he served only 3 before regaining his freedom. However, life post-prison was a stark departure from his previous opulence. Reagan re-entered society in a state of destitution, stripped of his ill-gotten assets and shunned by former associates who had been ensnared by his revelations. It was during this period that he found employment with Amarjit Chohan, ostensibly as a means to re-establish his footing within the drug trade. Yet Reagan's sinister intentions took an even darker turn, culminating in a heinous and unforgivable crime against an unsuspecting London family in 2003. In early 2003, a twist of fate and an irresistible opportunity set the stage for a series of events that would plunge the Cohan family into a harrowing mystery. Barely 5 months into Reagan's tenure at CIBA Freight, he approached Cohan with an enticing proposition: the sale of their company to eager investors willing to part with a substantial sum. The timing couldn't have been more intriguing. Nancy Cohan had been nurturing a longing in her heart, a yearning to return to her homeland of India. Peculiarly, she had begun to feel that the British educational system lacked the depth and soundness she desired for her family. In February of that year, Cohan pondered the offer and made a pivotal decision. He saw the potential in selling the company for a substantial $5 million after tax, a sum that could lay the foundation for a new venture in India. A few days before Valentine's Day, he and Reagan embarked on a journey to meet these supposed investors. But what followed was a turn of events no one could have foreseen. Unbeknownst to Cohan, this would be a journey from which he would never return. The gravity of the situation was so unforeseen that he hadn't even informed Nancy, leaving her in the dark about his whereabouts. Panic engulfed her as the days passed without a word from her husband. She made frantic calls to anyone whose number she could find, starting with CIBA Freight. To her shock, she was told that Cohan had traveled to Holland for a business deal, a conversation she had never shared with her husband. Valentine's Day arrived in 2003, but instead of celebrating love, Nancy found herself plunged into a heart-wrenching nightmare. She reached out to her brother, Onkar Verma, a journalist based in distant New Zealand, and confided in him about the alarming situation. Yet she could provide little more than the troubling uncertainty that gripped her family. The following day, Onkar expected to hear from his sister, but was met with deafening silence. Unbeknownst to him, his sister, mother, and 2 nephews had vanished without a trace. With mounting concern, he decided to take matters into his own hands and contacted the London police, raising the alarm about his family's mysterious disappearance. Intriguingly, the police's response was not what one might expect. Perhaps because of their immigrant status, they chose to visit CIBA Freight before heading to the Cohan residence. At the company, they were presented with a typed letter, purportedly from Cohan himself, announcing the family's return to India and the transfer of CIBA Freight to new management. The police, perhaps lulled by the plausible narrative of homesickness, didn't dig deeper into the matter. To them, it appeared as just another case of immigrants yearning for their homeland. Meanwhile, as they were still questioning the situation, a copy of the Guardian newspaper arrived, delivering an unsettling revelation. Cohan was reportedly on the run, attempting to evade authorities, a claim that held a modicum of credibility, given his past brush with the law, having once served time for tax evasion. Onkar Verma harbored a deep sense of unease regarding the abrupt disappearance of his sister and her family. He couldn't accept the notion that they had simply vanished into thin air without a trace or a word of communication. Determined to unravel the enigma, Onkar boarded an intercontinental flight on the 5th of March 2003 that ultimately landed him in London. Upon arriving in the UK, Onkar provided the police with disturbing information that raised serious doubts about the initial narrative. He revealed that he hadn't seen his sister for 9 long years, and their only means of maintaining a close bond was through phone conversations. The situation had become even more complicated due to the birth of her 8-week-old second child, Ravinder. This development prompted their mother, Amarjit Chohan, to travel from India to assist with the overwhelming responsibilities of caring for an infant, compounded by the presence of their first son, Devinder, who was barely 18 weeks old. Omkar's revelations extended further when he shared that his sister had received a recorded call from Cohan on the day he vanished. While it was not unusual for Cohan to send such messages, what troubled her deeply was that he had recorded it in English instead of their native Punjabi language. These revelations led the police, in collaboration with Omkar, to venture to the Cohan family's residence at 35 Sutton Road in Heston. When they discovered there was nothing short of eerie. The scene resembled a place deserted in haste, with scattered toys, damp clothes left in the washing machine, and both fresh and cooked food still sitting in the fridge. It was evident that they had not packed for any sort of journey, let alone a sudden disappearance. The police were beginning to comprehend that something sinister was unfolding. As the investigation progressed, a woman named Belinda Brewen came forward with a perplexing observation regarding Reagan, Cohan's former employee who had ascended to the role of CIBA Freight's owner. Reagan had once courted Belinda before his imprisonment in 1998. Upon his return in 2002, they had attempted to rekindle their relationship, driven in part by Reagan's newfound generosity. However, Belinda couldn't shake the feeling that Reagan was pushing their relationship at an unnaturally accelerated pace, as though he were attempting to assert control. One incident particularly alarmed Belinda when she discovered two men, identified as William Hornsey and Peter Reese, digging a trench in her yard on Reagan's orders. This came as a shock to Belinda, as she had never explicitly granted permission for such an action, despite Reagan's discussions about a drainage ditch during his visits. Amidst the unfolding investigation, a typed letter purportedly from Cohan arrived from France, addressed to the Cohan family in London. In the letter, he claimed to be on the run from UK authorities. However, the Cohan family, astute and discerning, questioned the authenticity of the letter. They knew that Cohan preferred to handwrite his letters, and the fact that their bank accounts remained untouched raised further doubts. It became increasingly apparent that someone was orchestrating a diversion to deflect attention away from their true actions, sending the authorities on a wild goose chase fraught with mystery and intrigue. The pivotal breakthrough in the case occurred when Belinda Brewen, under duress from Reagan's threats related to the drainage ditch incident, decided to approach the police. This was the moment when the intricate puzzle started to come together, a turning point for both law enforcement and Omkar Verma. Following Cohan's sudden disappearance, Reagan audaciously assumed control of the company, brandishing documents supposedly signed by Cohan. Skepticism lingered among the employees, but they were left with little choice but to yield to the new management under the weight of these documents. Simultaneously, the police embarked on a trail of breadcrumbs, tracking the last call made by Cohan. This electronic trace led them to Stonehenge, yet it was a dead end beyond that point. Their focus then shifted to apprehending Kenneth Reagan, the new owner of CIBA Freight, especially in light of Belinda Brewen's account. However, both Reagan and his cohorts, William Hornsey and Peter Reese, had managed to elude capture. On August 2, 2003, Reagan was finally arrested, and shortly thereafter, Hornsey and Reese were also apprehended. During questioning, the police finally pieced together the chilling narrative of events. They revealed that Cohan had indeed journeyed to Stonehenge, anticipating a meeting with the purported investors interested in purchasing his company. However, upon arrival, he encountered Hornsey and Reese, who rendered him unconscious and subsequently transported him to Reagan's residence near Salisbury in Wilton. There, he was coerced into signing certain documents before meeting a tragic and gruesome demise at the hands of his captors. With Cohan out of the way, Reagan recognized that he could not take full control of the company as long as Cohan's wife Nancy remained alive. They descended upon the Cohan family's residence, perpetrating a horrifying act that claimed the lives of everyone within. The perpetrators then proceeded to transport the lifeless bodies to Belinda's yard, where they initially buried them. Tragically, despite hours of excavation, their remains remained elusive. 10 days into the investigation, a grim discovery unfolded. A decomposed body, later identified as Cohan's, was found by a man and his son while they were fishing near Bournemouth piers. In the months that followed, more haunting revelations emerged. The bodies of Nancy and her mother were discovered, badly decomposed, and washed up on the shores of the Isle of Wight in July and August of 2003. Forensic scientists managed to confirm their identities, despite the advanced state of decomposition, making the culmination of a relentless pursuit of the truth in a case fraught with darkness and despair. The three men, Reagan, Hornsey, and Peter, faced a grave reckoning as they stood before the court, charged with addiction, false imprisonment, and the most heinous crimes, first-degree murder. Reagan and Hornsey, despite their desperate attempts to elude the clutches of justice, found themselves trapped beneath the weight of irrefutable evidence. The sentences handed down to them were inexorably tied to the lives they had so callously extinguished. They were sentenced to spend the rest of their days behind cold, unforgiving prison bars, a fitting punishment that reflected the immense gravity of their deeds. The specter of 4 lives, forever lost, hung heavily upon their consciences. In a cruel twist of fate, Peter received a relatively shorter sentence of 23 years. The court recognized that his level of involvement in the tragic death of Cohan was less significant than that of his co-conspirators, but he too would bear the weight of his actions within the confines of the penal system. Yet amid the solemnity of the sentencing proceedings, a heart-wrenching truth cast a long and haunting shadow. The 2 innocent children, whose lives had been cruelly snatched away, remained missing. Their bodies never recovered, leaving a somber reminder of the unfinished chapter in this tale of darkness and despair. And that's it for today. We've delved deep into the chilling and perplexing case of the Cohan family and the malevolent deeds of Reagan. Now it's your turn to weigh in on this harrowing story. Do you believe that Reagan received adequate punishment for his heinous crimes against the Cohan family? Your thoughts and opinions matter to us, so please share them in the comments section below. If you found this video both informative and thought-provoking, we encourage you to engage with us. Kindly show your support by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Also, remember to hit that notification bell. By doing so, you'll stay updated on future videos that delve into compelling narratives like this one.